Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant from Akulmac Technologies, and welcome to Legal Matters. And as you know, friends, we discuss the legal matters and also something which is affecting the nation and the people. And for this discussion, let me invite my friend from Ahmedabad, Mr. Jeet Bhatt. He is a very well-known lawyer practicing in High Court in Ahmedabad and also very well-known legal luminary. So we are very happy to welcome Jeet.
Thank you very much, Chandrakant, for introducing me and inviting me for this program. I'm looking forward to having a discussion.
Certainly, Jeet. In fact, what I want to discuss today is something which happened just yesterday, and that is the bail given to Riya Chakrabarti in the NDPS Act. And since we were discussing the NDPS Act also previously last week, and I want to know your opinion as a lawyer, as a legal luminary, that she has got the bail, but what next?
Yes, Chandrakant, as yesterday itself, the Bombay High Court has granted bail on strict conditions to Riya Chakravarti, wherein the High Court has imposed certain very stringent conditions, wherein she has to deposit her passport. She can't travel out of country without the court's permission. She, in fact, even if she has to leave the jurisdiction of Greater Bombay, she has to inform the special judge in Bombay. And so, well, yes, bail has been granted, but there are stringent conditions. She has to appear on every occasion at the trial. So ultimately, though her personal liberty has been granted to her, but on very strict conditions, and the judgment is also a very landmark judgment on this matter relating to NDPS Act, which I will be discussing. But what next is now, once the uh, once the trial begins, then the witnesses will be called, and ultimately the trial court will determine whether all these accused persons have been found guilty of the charges leveled against them. And if yes, then there are, as I said, there are very strict punishments which can be imposed. And the offenses which have been initiated against these celebrities, the offenses, the minimum punishment starts from 10 years and it can go up to 20 years. So if ultimately the court finds her guilty, then probably minimum which would be imprisonment which would be imposed would be 10 years. That's a very long imprisonment if she's found guilty.
Yes, in fact, she is quite young. She is just 28 years old, and 10 years of your prime life is taken out. Obviously, your life takes a totally different change. Um, but I want to ask you something different. Um, well, I think 70 or 80% of the people of India are with Sushant Singh, and there has been a lot of mishandling or whatever you want to call it. Foul play may be a better word, but in short of not using the right word, I'm just using this one. Um, and Riya Chakravarti is one of the major person involved in this case. She is getting the bail. Don't you think it is sending wrong signals to the people of India?
Uh, well, you are right. There are a lot of allegations against Riya Chakravarti. And the manner in which the media has taken up this case, in fact, sometimes the overindulgence of media leads to an unfair trial being conducted. And therefore, in my opinion, in fact, if you read the entire judgment, the judgment is a very detailed, lengthy judgment which discusses on the issues on NDPS Act and ultimately holds that she is entitled to bail because if you look at it from the Act, NDPS Act point of view, there was no recovery or any drugs which are found in her possession. Second, the in her statement itself, uh, she had retracted from that statement which she had made to the police officers. So, and also considering that the allegation against her was that she financed, she procured these drugs not for her personal use but for the use of Sushant Singh Rajput through these drug syndicate. The court did not find the prosecution and the investigating agency having very strong proof against her and ultimately held that she is entitled to bail. But considering the judgment and considering what was against her, I think the judgment is a very good judgment, and it grants her bail, but on strict conditions. So it balances out both the eventualities, one of the society and second of the personal liberty of the accused as well. So
So
it's a very balanced judgment. But yes, ultimately, if sentence is imposed, then 10 years is a long period of time which has to be spent in jail. But then if you commit such serious offenses, then that is the consequence. Because there has to be a deterrent, because if there is no deterrent, if the accused people go unpunished, then crimes will always increase. So this deterrence is very important in society.
So, let me ask you this question. And, I'm not a legal person, so you are the legal person. But, you have to forgive me by, understanding that I'm not a legal person. I will not use the legal jargon. So, my question Jeet, is that she is involved in too many things as a convict or as a person who got allegation, not really a convict, so I think that's a wrong word, but she is having too many allegations. Number one, financing, as the NDPS Act or this particular NCB has said that she was actually taking money from various sources, including Sushant Singh Rajput, and then spending that money in buying the drugs. So, and she was also consuming, but her quantity was, which the police recovered or the authorities recovered, was much lower than the, as we discussed last week. So, don't you think that even though in the trial, when the case goes for trial, she would be given at least a minimum of 1 year of punishment?
Uh, yes. So it depends, because the quantity, as per the judgment and the facts which I gone through, the judgment doesn't say that she was recovered, or there was some narcotic substance found in her possession. In fact, what the facts say is that the NCB had got some secret information on 28th of August 2020, and they caught hold of some Abbas Lakhani, who was having possession of 46 grams of ganja. And then from him, the NCB got hold of one Karan Arora, who was found with some ganja. From there, they reached to Zaid Vilatra, who is the supplier and the of the drugs and narcotic substance. And from there, they found one Abdul Bashir Parishad, from whom Shovik Chakrabarti and Samuel Miranda used to procure these drugs. And those were at the instance of Ria Chakrabarti. These are the allegations against Ria. So Ria was not found under any possession of any narcotics. But considering that Section 27A of the NDPS Act has been applied, the minimum sentence, if she is convicted under say 27A, is 10 years. But the Section 27A is for financing and harboring the activities regarding drugs and narcotics. So therefore, even if there is no possession or no even small quantity found from her, the Section 27A is very stringent, and therefore, if she is ultimately convicted, the punishment would be 10 years.
So I think you're talking about minimum of 10 years of punishment, and she is also involved in many other things, like there is a CBI investigation going on. There could be the finance angle, which is ED. There could be a Pakistan connection. We never know. I mean, we don't know. Um,
Right.
I think, as you said, this is a remarkable judgment, and she deserved a bail. But I think she is gone for long. I think, as a human being.
That will depend, because under the NDPS Act, there is a reverse presumption, as I said earlier, that under the NDPS Act, if there's a prosecution against you, then you are presumed to be guilty until you yourself come out with a defense saying that you are innocent, and if you can prove it in the court. But apart from NDPS, under the offenses under the Indian Penal Code, there is a presumption that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. So, with regards to the charge of abatement to suicide against Sushant Singh, there is a presumption in her favor, whereas under the NDPS Act, that presumption was not there. So, if she's been granted bail under NDPS Act, then that presumption is now available to her of innocence in Sushant Singh's suicide case. But that ultimately depends on the investigation that is carried out by CBI. Ultimately, they'll have to say whether it was a murder or abatement to suicide. But one or two important facts, if I may highlight, of this judgment passed by Bombay High Court, it lays down and it finds that, because earlier view of Bombay High Court and other high courts was that even if you are found with possession of a drug or narcotic substance of a small quantity, then the offenses were bailable. So if the quantity was less than smaller quantity, the police would immediately release you on bail. And also there is a provision under section 64A, if ultimately you want to be de-addicted and if you are ready to go to a rehabilitation center, the prosecution can also be dropped against you if the quantity is of a small quantity and was for personal use. But if it was an interim quantity between small and commercial or commercial quantity, then those provisions were not applicable. But bail was granted to all those persons who were caught having small quantity. But in this judgment of Riya Chakrabarti, the Bombay High Court holds that that is not the correct view, as NDPS is a special act and it has an overriding effect over Code of Criminal Procedure, and therefore the even a small quantity of drug having been found in your possession, you can be arrested by the police, and then you will have to apply for bail before the special courts constituted under the NDPS. This has a very large ramification and has a very wide magnitude, because until now the police used to grant bail without approaching the court on its own under NDPS Act when the quantity was of a small quantity. But this judgment reverses that view and holds that even if it's a small quantity, the offense is non-bailable. And in a non-bailable offense, the accused persons can be arrested and then they'll have to get bail from the concerned court. So in that ways, this is a very landmark judgment, and it changes the earlier judgments and the views of the earlier courts. And also now the police can act even more strictly.
So this is a high court judgment. That means it applies
Yes.
across India.
Yes, it would apply across the country. But now, if the matter reaches the Supreme Court and then the Supreme Court holds another view, then that's a different matter. If the Supreme Court endorses the view of the Bombay High Court, then that becomes the law, because the judgments of the Supreme Court are binding to one and all.
Yes, this is understood. So I think, Jeet, the sentiment of the country, which is like 70 to 80% of the people, want justice in case of Sushant Singh's death. I think the Indian people deserve to know what really transpired, what is the angle, and whoever is using these drugs and buying and selling, getting into the trade of something which is a illegal substance, not only in India but across the world. In fact, if you go to Middle East, uh, you know, uh, there is a punishment of beheading. So this thing is so tough by other countries,
Yes.
and in India, I think somebody has to make sure that these things are not repeated. And I mean, you are in a media business, but it doesn't give you authority to start spreading this kind of bad habits among the masses. I think something has to be done about it.
Right. So, yes, absolutely. You are absolutely right. The act is, though it is stringent, but not as much as it is in the Middle East. But Middle East, the manner in which Middle East deals with these offenses is also undemocratic, because you can't have beheading and cutting your fingers or cutting your hands for offenses. These punishments are completely barbaric and are not permissible in a democratic country. This country is based on rules of law, and based on the rules, uh, the same has to apply, and justice has to be delivered. So, but yes, these things cannot be recommended. Drugs cannot be recommended. The law enforcing agencies have to be extremely strict, and they have to find out the culprit, the perpetrators who commit such offense, and basically this has to target those who are in supplying and distributing these drugs. because the persons who are consuming it are under an habit and they become addicted. For them, there has to be rehabilitation centers, and their addictions have to be there has to be something done about their addiction, and it requires more rehabilitation centers in India. But for these persons who are financing it, those who are supplying, those who are cultivating it, they are the main perpetrators who are committing very, very serious offenses. And yes, the offense under the NDPS Act is, in fact, more serious than rape and murder as well, because this uh, these offenses can demolish the entire country and its future. So yes, the provisions have to be extremely strict, and strict actions have to be taken by the law enforcement agencies.
Jeet, in fact, this case has just started, and she got the bail. Bail is a right in the democracy, as you said. The country is governed by rules and regulations, and there are bail as a regulation. So I think it's a normal activity where the court has granted bail. But I think it has just begun. As you said, the charges are very, very serious. Most of India, almost like 80% of the Indians, wants a closure on this, and perpetrators needs to be booked and tried and jailed or whatever punishment they deserve. So,
Precise,
with this,
precisely the
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yes. Yes, precisely. With this, they have to reach to a logical end. And but one thing which I want to tell you is bail under the NDPS is not as a matter of right. In fact, the provisions are so strict that bail normally in cases are always rejected. Rarely in special cases bails are granted, but the facts of this case were such that bail were granted to the main accused, but other accused bail, including Shavik Chakravarti, has been rejected because there was some material incriminating that was found against him, and therefore his bail has been rejected by the High Court.
It means the brother Shavik will not get the bail because there was a recovery and there is evidence against him. And Ria got the
Yes,
bail, yet the case has to go on trial, and there is ample evidence against her. So I think she will have to go through the whole cycle.
precisely. Yes, absolutely.
So I think people who are watching this, the learning from an expert is that this law is very strict, and even though Priya got the bail, and this is exactly what we are discussing, but it is not, and it's a conditional bail. That means there are certain conditions, very strict conditions attached to it. So it is not that she can just get out and lead a normal life. And when the case goes on trial, there will be a lot of other activities which will be coming out. And then if she is found guilty of either financing a drug racket or consuming it, she will be booked and finally sent to the jail.
Punished. Precisely. And now it is more stringent of because of this judgment is that even small quantity possession of even a smallest quantity will also lead you into jail, and the offense has become completely non-bailable, and therefore also they are very strict.
So I think this is a very good information that you have given us, Mr. Jeet, and thank you so much. And I'm sure our viewers will like and probably like to post their comments, also like to engage with you. So I think it's a great information and great learning for our viewers.
Thank you very much, Chandrakant. In fact, I enjoyed this session, and I hope that your viewers get to know in depth the provisions regarding the NDPS Act and how strict they are.
Certainly. So, viewers, if you have any questions, please send it to us and we can pick that up in the next session with Jeet. You can also engage with us live during this discussion. But just in case, if you forget to write your comments, you can send us later on. The email is also listed at the end of this video. So, Jeet, thank you very much for joining us today. We will catch up next week once again.
Thank you very much, Chandrakant. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye. Good morning, Neville.
Good morning, CK. How are you?
Yeah, we are enjoying the first day of total lockdown in India, but I'm at work. As you can,
Good. Pleased to hear it, even though casual.
of course, because we are working from home.
Now there you go. Because lockdown does mean working from home. And guess what? I'm in my study, so I'm working from home too. And that's the whole point. Okay. So let's get people into the right frame of mind to continue to work, because an SME owner, an entrepreneur, needs to keep their business running. And what that means is, although we're in this physical distancing, this isn't social distancing, because you and I are being very social, but we're physically distanced away. And a lot of listeners and watchers on here are going to be physically distanced from their business and physically distanced from the people that they work with in their business. But that doesn't mean you keep the distance. You must have a routine and get on with it. So today, day one, is all about creating that routine. The good news is you and I woke up as normal. We got ready for work as normal, and we're in work as normal. But how many of the listeners have actually done that today? How many are physically in their little office at home with the kids running around, and maybe your parents live with you as well, shouting and screaming and the dog barking? How many of you have physically got yourself in that mindset to work? You have.
Well, as far as I can see from my window, there are people who think it's a holiday, and there are few guys who are panicking. They're trying to get or basically flock around the provision stores. So all kind of people, there are. I think it'll take 1 or 2 days for this feeling to sink in, and then people start realizing they have to work, and hence they will come back to their small home offices like you and me, start working.
Well, the point is, get ahead of the game. This isn't a holiday. This isn't, we haven't suddenly jetted off to sunnier climes. And the other thing is, in India, it's the first of 21 days. This is 3 weeks. And the point is, let's make it the best 3 weeks for your business ever. And the best thing we can say is get into a routine immediately. If you wake up in the morning and you get dressed and you do, your physical things, have a shower, get yourself clean, etc., do it. Do it every single day. Don't say, oh, I'm going to have a lie-in this morning. Don't even start, The government have given you the time off. You haven't given yourself the time off. The weekend's coming. That's time off. But today's Wednesday. So let's use this as a driving opportunity to get your business in the shape that other people are not going to be, because they're going to take it as a holiday. So let's be smart. Get yourself ready for work. Create the routine that you normally do. And the only thing about from that routine that you're not going to do is physically open that front door and get in the car and go to work. But go through the motions, mentally go through those motions. And the most important thing is here, now take the opportunity to create a workspace at home that's just yours.
The problem,
away from everybody else.
Neville, the problem is we are all so much used to getting stuck for 1 hour or 1.5 hours in traffic. So I recommend get a car game downloaded on your PC, and if you're bored of sitting in office, start driving a car.
There you go. So we can do lots of things and make it fun. But the thing is, we need to create that routine. I can't stress it enough. This isn't a prescription. We shouldn't be thinking other people are going to give me loads and loads and loads of advice. The simple advice is do what you did yesterday. The only difference is you're not physically going out the front door.
Right.
But now what you need to do is create that workspace at home. You know, it may be in the end of the garden, and the thing is, lots of people are going to be outside now in their gardens, in their backyards. You know, because it's a holiday, but it's not a holiday for you. Take this opportunity, take yourself away to a quiet place in your house somewhere, and physically make that space yours. Create it as a workspace. And the other thing is, your colleagues, your business associates are now all at home. Don't lose contact. That doesn't mean to say you're on the telephone all day. You don't need to do that. You can be there socially engaging with them on Twitter, on Facebook, through your own website, on email, on LinkedIn. You can create all of this stuff that you've put off. Now's the opportunity to do it. And it's as simple as that. And I think what we need to do is just, that's a bite-sized chunk. Create a routine, find a space in your work, your home space now that you can call yours for 2 or 3 hours a day and get on with it, because life will not stop. And the businesses that will succeed are the ones that create that routine today. Day one. So I'll see you on day 2.
Right. So let's start with our work, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Fantastic. Good luck, everybody. Thanks, CK. See you tomorrow.
Have a nice day, Neville. Bye-bye.
And you.
Hello, friends. This is Chandrakant, and I welcome you graciously on Legal Matters. Today, we want to discuss about something which is very remarkable, and half of India was not even born at that point in time. The story is of 1975. It was a case between Srimati Indira Gandhi and Raj Narayan, and the case was ruled in favor of Mr. Raj Narayan. Srimati Indira Gandhi lost that case, and the ruling was made by Allahabad High Court. It's a very historic judgment, and to discuss this further, let me invite my friend Mr. Jeet Bhatt from Ahmedabad.
Thank you, Chandrakant, for having me in this legal matters. And I'm looking forward for this discussion in a very important judgment of the Allahabad.
Yes, in fact, there was a time where it was known very publicly that India is Indra and Indra is India. That was a slogan which was promoted, and I think most of us were not even born at that time. Almost 50 to 60% Indians that we are today were not even born in 1975, and that was the power of Srimati Indira Gandhi, where she can equate herself with the country of India. Being such a powerful leader of our nation, she lost a case, and I think we would like to know. It's very interesting to know, such a remarkable leader, very popular leader, losing the legal battle. I think you can throw more light on this one.
Yes, absolutely. It was a very important judgment of that era, and a very important historic development which happened thereafter because of this judgment was the imposition of internal emergency in the country. It was declared on 25th of June 1975. This judgment of the Allahabad High Court was declared on 12th of June 1975, wherein Srimati Indira Gandhi uh, election from the seat of Rai Bareli was declared to be void, and therefore, in order to nullify that judgment, she was compelled to declare emergency on 25th June 1975. But what had happened and what were the facts and how this came up before the Allahabad High Court and what are the rulings, that is what I want to discuss with you in this show. The facts were that the general elections for the Lok Sabha was conducted in the year 1971, wherein Srimati Indira Gandhi and Sri Raj Narayan were contesting from the parliamentary seat of Rai Bareli. Indira Gandhi had got 1,83,000 votes and was declared the winner from that constituency. and thereafter she continued to be the prime minister of this country. But Raj Narayan had filed an election petition immediately after the results were declared, alleging that Srimati Indira Gandhi had indulged in some corrupt practices under the provisions of the Representation of People's Act, and therefore his petition alleged that the main contentions of the petition were that Srimati Indira Gandhi had procured an uh, the assistance of one Shri Yashpal Kapoor, who was a gazetted officer in the employment of the Government of India, holding the post of officer on special duty to the Prime Minister's Secretariat, and having the assistance of a gazetted officer during election and for election purpose amounts to a corrupt practice under the provisions of the Representation of People's Act. The second allegation against Srimati Indira Gandhi was that she had procured the assistance of the armed forces of the Union for furtherance of her election prospects, as the members of the Air Force uh, had arranged the airplanes and helicopters at her instance for her to address the meetings at her constituency. So the reason given is that by having assistance of armed forces, of gazetted officers, of police forces, as well as the officers of the state of UP, he was having a dominating position. And to use that position over other candidates amounts to inequality in treatment to all candidates who want to contest elections from that position, from that parliamentary seat. Those were the allegations which were made. Also, allegations were made that the agents of Srimati Indira Gandhi had distributed quilts, blankets, liquor, etc., to the voters and had influenced them to vote in her favor. Also, it was alleged that free conveyance was provided by the agents and Mr. Yashpal Kapoor to the voters to come to the polling station. Therefore, the entire election was challenged on the ground that Srimati Indira Gandhi had indulged in corrupt practices for winning that election. So the court then framed certain issues in the matter. The first issue which the court framed was whether Srimati Indira Gandhi had obtained assistance of Shri Yashpal Kapoor for her elections while he was still a gazetted officer in the service of the government of India. Srimati Indira Gandhi had a battery of lawyers who were engaged and were defending the case, and wherein she had stated that Yashpal Kapoor was a member of the government of India, but he had resigned on 13th of January 1971, and the resignation was orally accepted on 14th January 1971, and the notification was also issued accepting his resignation, which was issued on 25th January 1971. So she refuted the allegation by saying that once the gazetted officer having resigned and the resignation having been accepted, and then from then on, whatever he has done, he is not the gazetted officer of the Union of India. But the court went through the entire documentary evidence as well as the oral evidence, and also interpreting the service rules, came to the conclusion that Sri Yashpal Kapoor could not have been ceased to be a government servant till the date of notification was issued by the appointing authority accepting his resignation, which was accepted on 25th of January 1971. So therefore, the court held that whatever assistance Yashpal Kapoor had given to Indira Gandhi till 24th of January 1971, he was a gazetted officer. And it was also proved that he had given speeches on 7th January, and from 14th January onwards, he was the election agent and had carried out several functions for the election prospect of Srimati Indira Gandhi. And therefore, in the month of January till 24th January, whatever functions and assistance was given by Sri Yashpal Kapoor was done by a gazetted officer of the government of India. And therefore, this amounted to corrupt practice under the Representation of People's Act. On this ground, the court held that yes, this issue is proved in favor of the petitioner Sri Rajnarayan and against the respondent Srimati Indira Gandhi. With respect to other allegations, which were that she had procured the assistance of the armed forces as the Air Force planes and helicopters were arranged for her to reach the constituency for giving election addresses. The court, interpreting the entire documentary evidence, held that the Prime Minister of the country is entitled to make use of Indian Air Force aircrafts while traveling for official as well as non-official purpose as well. And in the facts of that case, the court held that by using Air Force planes to reach Raebareli or to reach Uttar Pradesh did not amount to taking the assistance of the armed forces in furtherance of her prospects for the election. And therefore, that issue was held in favor of Srimati Indira Gandhi and against Raj Narayan. But with respect to the third issue, which was whether at the instance of Srimati Indira Gandhi and her election agent, the Yashpal Kapoor, the district magistrate of Raebareli and the superintendent of police and the home secretary of Uttar Pradesh government arranged for rostrums, loudspeakers and barricades to be set up for members of the police force to be posted in connection with her election tour. Because normally whenever a prime minister or chief minister is coming, police force is always there to provide security. Also, sometimes barricades are also issued if there is a big gathering. But what the Uttar Pradesh government servants had done was that they had procured and arranged for rostrum, the Shamiana Mandap, and also arranged for loudspeakers and electricity, which was not within the purview of the state government because it was to because during an election it is to be done by the party and the candidate. So what the court held in with regards to this issue is that it was conclusively proved by documentary and oral evidence that the rostrums were constructed by government agency for meetings addressed by Indira Gandhi in her constituency. And it was proved that the gazetted officers of the state, particularly the superintendent of police and executive engineer PWD, got the rostrums constructed for the purpose of providing for the purpose of public meeting addressed by respondent number one in her constituency. So this the court held that yes, Indira Gandhi had procured the assistance of gazetted officers in furtherance of her election prospect, which gave her an edge over all other candidates because while contesting elections, everybody is equal. And therefore, having assistance of government servants and also the election agent who was the gazetted officer amounts to unfair practice, amounts to a corrupt practice under the Representation of People's Act. So this issue was held against her and in favor of the petitioner. With regards to other allegations that she had distributed quilts, dhotis, liquor, etc. to the voters, and also that she had provided conveyance to the voters to reach the polling station, the court held that the petitioner could not prove these allegations. But two allegations of the petitioners which were proved were that the candidate, Srimati Indira Gandhi, had used the assistance of Sri Yashpal Kapoor, who was a government servant, a gazetted officer of the government of India, and also used the services and assistance of the gazetted officers in the state of Uttar Pradesh. And on these grounds, he had indulged in corrupt practices, and these grounds were proved by the petitioner. And ultimately, the court held in favor of the petitioner, declaring the election of Srimati Indira Gandhi as void. And further, she was disqualified for a further period of 6 years from the date of the judgment for contesting elections under the Representation of People's Act. So this was a huge blow at that time to the government. And the Prime Minister was to lose her position overnight. However, this judgment was stayed for a further period of 20 days, and therefore she was not to be removed immediately from the post of Prime Minister. But what happened in those 20 days is that on 12th of June, this judgment was delivered. But on 25th of June, the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister wrote a letter to the President saying that there is an internal state of emergency and you declare that there is an emergency in this country. And on 25th June 1975 itself, the President proclaimed the state of internal emergency and the fundamental rights and civil liberties were suspended. All the opponents of the government were taken in custody, detained for a period of more than 20 years. The state of emergency lasted for about almost 2 years. In that time, what the government did was that they introduced an amendment to the Constitution, which was the 39th Amendment Act, wherein Article 329A of the Constitution came to be inserted, which provided that the elections to the post of Prime Minister cannot be challenged in any court of law. And this was remarkable because this took away the power of judicial review, which is which had been considered to be the basic structure of the Constitution. And this this changed the entire structure of the Constitution. And Therefore, the power that she wielded during that time was enormous, which was never seen before and even afterwards. And therefore, that constitutional amendment came to be challenged, and the Supreme Court delivered a landmark judgment, the matter of Srimati Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, where the Supreme Court held that this constitutional amendment was unconstitutional and it altered the basic structure of the Constitution. Also, during the state of emergency, what she did was that she amended the Representation of People's Act 1951 with retrospective effect so that the grounds on which the judgment was delivered were nullified and taken away. And therefore, the entire judgment of the Allahabad High Court was nullified. And the Supreme Court had to accept that since the act has been amended with retrospective effect, the grounds for challenge were not available. And therefore, it set aside the Allahabad High Court judgment. But it did rule that the constitutional amendment with regards to Article 329A was bad, illegal, and void. This is what had happened during the time when internal emergency had been declared. And yes, she had tremendous power during those times. And it is because of this judgment of the Allahabad High Court that this historic event had happened.
So this is very remarkable, and it is almost like a plot of a movie when you narrated it. And nowadays a lot of these OTT platforms are showing these political dramas. So this story, it happened in real, but it sounds like it appears to be a movie plot. But Jeet, let me ask you one question. What is the state of affairs now with regard to the modus operandi of the politicians?
Well, see, election petitions are filed under the Representation of People's Act. Several petitions are pending before the High Court. So, and there are allegations made by both the parties. So well, so there are corrupt practices which are going on, and there are petitions and there are judgments which are being delivered. But ultimately, it is very difficult sometimes to prove these allegations in court. So therefore, what happens is it goes unnoticed or it goes unproved, and therefore we cannot have such judgments in every petition. So therefore, corrupt practices are prevalent in the country. We can't deny it, but it has to be curbed, and such petitions have to be filed before the High Court, and the High Court has to deliver judgments in a uh, in a short period of time, rather than taking too long.
So, Jeet, the 49th Amendment, which was made during the emergency, what is the status of that now? Is it applicable or it has been challenged?
So 39th Amendment was challenged to the Supreme Court, and some parts of it were declared to be unconstitutional. And thereafter, in 1977, the entire amendment was removed from the Constitution. So it is not in the Constitution anymore.
Oh, okay, it is already taken out from the. Okay, so then it's a sigh of relief for a lot of people, because then once you become a powerful person in India, then nobody can challenge it. It is almost like an autocratic state. So it's a good thing that
Absolutely.
it was taken out from the constitution. So I think it's very interesting. I am sure people can read a lot about it. I'm not sure whether a lot of information is available about this incident, but whatever is available, I think it gives a lot of goosebumps hearing about this. How the power was taken away and then wielded by the people who were in power. It was a, I would say that it was a dark political history of our country, which has been corrected now. So, with this, I think I'd like to say thank you, Jeet, for giving us all this information. It's quite interesting to learn about these historic cases. And I will say goodbye for today. I will meet you with some other very interesting legal matters in the next episode.
Absolutely, Chandrakant. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hello, welcome to Akulmek Live. I'm Kanchan Verma, and in the series of Delhi Sultanate, yet again we are with Mrs. Meeta Joshi, who is a renowned historian. So we will be discussing about one of the important aspects of history. So before that, I would like to welcome her. Welcome to the show, Meeta.
Namaskar, Kanchan. How are you?
I'm perfectly fine, ma'am. And today we were discussing, as you noted, we are discussing about Delhi Sultanate. And there is a great aspect is about the war of Panipat. So why this war was necessary, that's what I would like to know. And what made Lodhis to get defeated by a new invader, Babur.
See, after Balban's rule, there was no good successor who could take the legacy of Delhi Sultanate forward. So there was a decline in Delhi Sultanate. And then after Balban, Sayyids, Lodhis, they came. In Lodi, Ibrahim Lodi was the last ruler, and he was a very, very, arrogant type of a personality. He never assimilated with other people in the empire, and in that process, he had many enemies around him. In fact, Babur was invited by one of his cousins, Behlol Lodi, to India to have a war with Ibrahim Lodi. You know, these internal feuds were so bad in India that time. Before Babur met Ibrahim Lodi in the field of Panipat, he already had 5 expeditions in India. So he consolidated his position that way. And he knew about the climate, he knew about all the intricacies of Indian polity that time. India was politically divided into two groups, two rival independent groups that time. The supreme power was in the hands of Afghans, but they themselves were divided. Ibrahim Lodi, the Sultan of Delhi and Agra, was not the master of entire northern India. The nobles of Bihar were powerful enough to oppose his authority. His uncle Alam Khan and Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, were planning to capture the throne of Delhi and Agra. So he knew about these internal politics which was going on in India. When Babur came to India, I'll just give you a little backdrop about Babur. He was born out of Turkish Mongol wedlock. So he had the ferocity of Mongols and the ability of the Turks in his blood. He's a very tough warrior, Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur, as he was known. And he was the person who founded the Mughal Empire in India. Now, what happened when he came to India? As I told you, the political condition was not so good, and Babur had an upper hand because for the first time, the use of gunpowder and field artillery was introduced in India, which Ibrahim Lodi did not have. With the sound of the cannons, the elephants of Ibrahim Lodi's army, they got annoyed and they trampled their own soldiers because when any animal is irritated, they will not see whether they are our own people or they are, the invaders or foreigners. So those elephants, they trampled the army of Ibrahim Lodi itself. So the first Battle of Panipat, it was fought on 21st April 1526 AD. And why, as you asked me that why this Battle of Panipat is significant. It is significant because it ended the Delhi Sultanate rule, and a new rule, the Mughal rule, started after this first Battle of Panipat. That's why it is so significant and important in the pages of history, because completely Delhi Sultanate was demolished by the first Battle of Panipat, and Babur started and founded the Mughal rule in India. And thereafter, the Mughal rules for around 250 or 300 odd years.
Well, I would like to know what is the duration? What was the duration of a war of Panipat? And as you mentioned, the first time the gunpowder was used on Indian soil. So, what are other features of this war? And as you said, it's very important because it established the Mughal Empire in India. But what are new things which happened in the war scene and later on that was used in wars in India?
See, before the battle started, both armies were stationed face to face for 8 days, from 12th of April to 19th of April 1526 AD. And at last, Babur, he started the war and sent a contingent of about 5,000 soldiers and made a night attack on 20th April, but it failed. Then again on 21st April, Babur used two techniques. Okay, these are known as Mulugma and Abara. It was dividing the army like into east, west, north, and south, so that from all the fronts, the Lodi's army was covered. They were trying to take away the attention of the people, of the soldier of Ibrahim Lodi's army, and they succeeded in it. And then Babur's army, as I told you, had an upper hand because they, first of all, they used the gunpowder and field artillery, which Ibrahim Lodi's army lacked. Use of cannon. Okay, use of cannon was the turning point in the first Battle of Panipat. And that was, though the army of Ibrahim Lodi was huge, 20,000 troops. It's a huge number. But all those 20,000 people, along with Ibrahim Lodi, were killed on the battlefield.
Well, when we are talking about Babur and his features about his art, war, I mean, the craft of war, we are talking about when Babur. So it's, I think, very essential to really discuss about Ibrahim Lodi also. What were those features? Though he got defeated, but he is a name when we're talking about that period and Delhi Sultanate. So I would like to know more about Ibrahim Lodi.
See, Ibrahim Lodi was not a popular sultan. There were reasons, because he was very arrogant in his behavior and suspicious in nature, which created a rift among the Afghans. And they were unable to face their common enemy jointly. And this was one point which inspired Babur to invade India, because there was this rift among the own people of Ibrahim Lodi and the Afghans. And before him, the other Delhi Sultanate rulers, they were very popular. Like if you see Razia Sultan in Slave Dynasty, or you see Alauddin Khilji, you take up Balban, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, they were famous rulers and they were loved by people. But because he was so arrogant in his behavior and very suspicious in his nature, so even the Afghans disliked him. And that was the main reason that his own people, they invited Babur to have a war against Ibrahim Lodi. And thus this first battle of Panipat happened, which changed the entire track of Indian polity by ending the Delhi Sultanate and establishing the Mughal rule in India.
Well, as we discussed that there was some chaos in those period, and that's what helped Babur to invade India. So, what are those characteristics of Babur which really help him to establish a Mughal empire here?
See, as I told you, there were many reasons behind the success of Babur. The very first reason was that he was an efficient and resourceful commander, and he had several seasoned and disciplined warriors with him who made his task easy in India. Having a good, capable army is the key to win any war, and Babur owned one. Okay. Number two, his war strategies, his tulugma, and his efficient artillery paved the way to his success in India. Then he, because he understood that the political situation was not very good at that point of time, so he took advantage of that and he struck at the right time. So all these things contributed to his success.
Well, it is an important aspect of history, and it was so good to talk to you regarding this first battle of Panipat. We'll be meeting again and discuss further about our history, and we'll discuss the great kings and the sultans in coming series. Till then, bye-bye, and you take care.
Thank you, Kanchan.
Hello friends, I'm Kanchan from Akulmek Technologies and you are welcome to our show. Today we have a very eminent personality on our show, and she is Amita Sinha. She is a former professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at University of Illinois, USA, and she has also taught in the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning at IIT Kharagpur, and she's also into Humanities and Social Science Department at IIT Gandhinagar. She's also well-known author of Landscape about India, Forms and Meaning, and she's a recipient of Fulbright Nehru Academic and Professional Excellence Award. So welcome to the show, Amita ji. How are you today?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
So, we had been doing great topic like mandala and the rise of architecture using this mandala. And today I am so glad to really discuss about the origin of Varanasi. So I would like to ask you, what is the origin of Varanasi and how it is linked to its geography?
So Varanasi is older than time, as they say. It's beyond time. And there is a origin story, which let me share it with you. So here in this collage, which is based on a 19th century painting, we see Shiva holding Varanasi on his trident. And Parvati is playing the veena, Ganga is descending from the heavens at the request of Bhagirathi. And so Varanasi is really associated with Shiva, and it is between two rivers on the banks of the Ganges, of course. Here the Ganga flows from south to north, it changes its course. And the area between the river Varuna on the north and the rivulet Assi on the south is claimed by Varanasi. Now, Varuna is associated with obstructing evil, and Assi with destroying evil. So this is a sacred ground, and it is also called Anandvan. That is how Shiva describes it to Parvati. Anandvan, Anand Kanan, a forest of bliss. And in this drawing, you see many water bodies, kunds, which would have existed in ancient times. And this is where um, hermits, sages came and established their ashrams on the banks of the kunds. So this is, a city which is the abode of Shiva, and it is also a place where one can encounter the learned people and learn. It's a city of learning, and it is a place which is full of lingas, a city of 1,000 lingas, I would say. And these lingas are in many temples and shrines. However, there are other gods also, and we'll see more of that as we go along.
Okay, so actually, this city itself is very, very huge in terms of the feeling of Indians, because everything which is pious and which is religious, especially for Hinduism, I think Varanasi plays a vital role. And it is said that gods live here. So I would like to know, what is the history of the city?
So on the banks of the Ganga, and the area where Varuna and Ganga meet, this is the site which has been excavated, and the excavations since the 1940s have proved that the city goes back a long, long time. Certainly goes back to 12th century BC, and possibly beyond. And it has been continuously occupied since then. So, it's mentioned in the Mahabharata, in the Upanishads, in the Purana, especially the Kashi Khand of Skanda Purana. And what archaeology tells us is that the continuous habitation of the Rajghat plateau, which you see in the slide below, means that it has been very important historically also. So Kashi was one of the 16 Janpadas of ancient times. And we hear about it, during definitely during the Mauryan times, in which the Magad Janpad rose to prominence. And during the times of Ashok, as Buddhism rose, Ashok himself came here and established a stupa. So the city is also associated with Buddhists. And I think during a brief period of time, when Buddhism was very important, Shiva had actually left Varanasi and had gone to Mount Mandara, and there was a king called King Devodasa who had to be driven out. Now, Buddhism, Sarnath, where Buddha gave his first sermon, this is a very important node for pilgrimage. And the stupa established by Ashoka is no longer there, but there is a latest stupa, dharmic stupa, that you see in the slide. And there were many viharas, monasteries, and chatyagrahas. In fact, the symbol of India, the capital of India, is actually a Buddhist, an Ashokan capital with the 4 lions on the top of the pillar. The Rajghat Plateau was also inhabited later on by the Gadwala kings. All through the Gupta period, Varanasi continued to be an important city. And by the time we come to the 12th century, the Gadwala rulers had made Varanasi a very important site by building temples there, and the Gadwala rulers used to worship um, uh, Adikeshav, Vishnu, on the banks of the Ganga on the Varuna River. When the first armies of Muhammad Ghori, led by Qutbuddin Aiba, came, the Gadwala rule ended, and so did um, and so did the Buddhist site Sarnath, which was also, the viharas were destroyed.
So actually, when we are talking about mandala and the mandala architecture creation in India, when we talk about Hindu architecture as well as Buddhist architecture, so can you please tell us about the Kashi Mandala, which is, I think, very popular feature in Varanasi architecture?
Yes, Varanasi is also known as Kashi, the city of light. The Kashi, from the Sanskrit root Kash, which means light. And mandala, as we know, is a circle. But this circle is actually adjusted to the topography. So here in this diagram, you see the circle on the banks of the Ganga, and this is the Kashi Mandal, or the Kashi Kshetra, which is the sacred ground between Varana and Asi. But the circle, when adjusted to the topographic reality, becomes more like the sector of the whole circle. And here, if you see the mandal, the center is this Madhyameshwar, where the most famous temple of Varanasi is situated, and a line drawn between Madhyameshwar and Delhi Vinayak is actually 5 crores or 17 kilometers. And so this is the area of the Kashi Mandal, 5 crores, where the light always shines. And this is the place which is, as we said before, beyond time. It is a place to be enlightened. Now, the story goes that Brahma and Vishnu, how they came to acknowledge the supremacy of Shiva. So in the 6th century fragment, we see Brahma on his goose flying upwards because a pillar of light appeared, and Vishnu as a boar diving down, and they could not find, the upper or the lower limits of this pillar of light. And so that is how they ended up acknowledging, this is the city of Shiva, this is, Kashi Dham. And when the city was first mapped by James Prinsep in 1822, the inner city area is the Abhimukta, the zone where Shiva never leaves Kashi. The city is never forsaken. And the very center is Vishweshwara Temple, which is now visited by millions of people. And in this aerial photograph, you see the Kashi Vishwanath Temple. It is actually a temple built 18th century temple built by Queen Ahilyabai of Holkar. The earlier temple was destroyed in the 17th century, and the Gyan Vyapi Mosque was built. And before that, the temple of the 12th century was destroyed by the Sultanate armies. But Hindus kept on rebuilding, and so Vishweshwara never really, the site never lost its sanctity, and Vishweshwara never left Kashi, so to speak. And here is the view of Kashi Vishwanath Temple, the golden dome, which was given this gold plate by Ranjit Singh, the Sikh ruler, and the spires of the temple built by the Holkar queen.
Okay, so I want to ask you that why Varanasi has become such an important pilgrimage destination? What is so unique about this city?
Well, Kashi Vishwanath, draws millions of pilgrims from all over the world. But the Ganga also draws pilgrims. People come here to bathe in the Ganga on auspicious occasions. people come here to die. Manikarnika Ghat, popularly known as the Burning Ghat, is where Shiva is. This is also known as Mahashamshan, the Great Shamshan, the Great Cremation Ground, where if you die, you will achieve moksha. And so thousands come here to spend the last days of their lives in the hospices, and when they, when they die, Shiva whispers the Tarkeshwar mantra, and liberation is assured. Now, the pilgrimage, as pilgrimage site, Varanasi has great sanctity because the Char Dham are here: Badrinath, Dwarka, Puri, and Rameshwaram. The 12 Jyotirlingas are here. The 7 Saptpuris, including Varanasi, are here. Ayodhya, Mathura, Ujjain, Haridwar, Dwarka, and Kanchipuram. So, in a way, Varanasi has gathered the sanctity of all of the sacred sites in India. This is a process of, spatial transposition. All the sacred sites come here, and they add to the sanctity of Varanasi. Pilgrimage has been happening for a very, very long time, certainly since the 13th century. And in this pilgrim map of the 19th century, you see the Kashi Mandal, which is protected by the Ganas and the Bhairvas and the Matrikas. You see Varanasi as a square, with the center as Vishweshwara, and you see, of course, Ganga Ghats lined by temples. The Panchkroshi pilgrimage, the 5 krosh, is circumambulated. So when pilgrims are on the Panchkroshi pilgrimage, they go around the sacred kshetra of the 5. Of the 108 shrines, 5 are most important, and this is where the pilgrims spend about a night each. In Shivratri, they try to complete the pilgrimage in 1 day and night. Pilgrimage is always, always effective, but especially so during the Adhik Mas, the intercalary month, the extra month, which comes about every 3 years, when the solar and lunar calendars have to be synchronized. And during Kartik Purnima, during Shivratri, again, pilgrimage is undertaken by millions of people. So bathing in the Ganga, visiting Kashi Vishwanath, going on the pilgrimage, this is what attracts devotees to Varanasi from all over the world.
Yeah, so it was so wonderful to really know about these finer points about the rise of Banaras or Kashi, and of course, how this has become a great pilgrimage point for people to come, especially Buddhist people and Hindu followers of Hindu. So it was so lovely to talk to you and understand the mandala formation when we talk about the whole city and how it's being created and the stories behind that. So, what is one thing which really reminds you when you really think about the city, Banaras? What comes first in your mind?
I think about the skyline. I see the ghats and I see the temple spires, and this is probably the most famous skyline of India. Yes, and I think about the Ganga, and I think also about visiting, the Jyotirlinga in Kashi Vishwanath Temple.
Okay, so it was so wonderful to talk to you and know about this great city, which is one of the ancient city of the world. And we'll be meeting again to discuss more about mandala formation in different architectural and city formation. So till then, bye bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, friends. This is Agul Mac Live, and I am Chandrakant. Uh, Most of the Indians would be tracking the news about social media, and there are a lot of fake news also being coming our way. The war between the government and the social media platform is heating up. Some of the social media platform has approached the court, uh, but what government is asking them to do is basically create a self-regulatory system. And this is related to whistleblowing, because social media platform has been used to spread news, to spread good news, and in case something is going wrong somewhere, social media is a very simple tool which can be used to spread the information, put pressure on the governance to take corrective measure. However, the whistleblowing arena itself is going out of hand, and this is the matter of discussion for today. Before we start our discussion, let me tell you that there is a free giveaway. Stick around in this discussion till the end, and we will tell you how you can claim your free gift. Friends, welcome back. And in today's discussion, let me invite my guest today. He's joining us from London. His name is Mr. Naval Gund, and he's chairman of MindFit Limited. The discussion is about whistleblowing and what is going on in the social media in the context of Indian tussle between Indian government and the social media platforms, and what is happening world over with the whistleblowing. So without further ado, let me have Naval start the discussion today.
Good morning, CK. Good morning, everybody. And a very warm welcome to this interesting little discussion that we're going to have today. It's going to be about whistleblowing, but I suppose the bottom line here is about integrity. It's about who we are, what we do when we do it. Are we doing the right thing, or are we doing things that literally are right for other people or are right for us because it's helping us achieve something? I want to be more specific than that as the discussion will unfold. So let's look at the Facebook issue, which is probably not just Facebook, it's Twitter, WhatsApp, and anything associated with the Twitter and Facebook family. In India in particular, some laws were passed earlier this year, and some fairly simple requests were made around individuals' privacy to make sure that we were protected in the best way possible. And let's face it, social media platforms have been put on the spot around the world about putting out propaganda, even though not generated by people in these organizations that run the platforms, but it's being used by terrorists, by people that just want to unsettle the world, that want to put out propaganda that's for themselves. You might call them influencers, but it's the negative arena. It's fake news. It's the stuff that we're trying to get off social media even before it starts, because it does bring panic around the world, and suddenly a belief and what someone says in print, in writing, is suddenly fact. And the reality of life is there is probably about 1% of fact and 99% of fiction and imagination. So that's the subject for today. So CK, let's look at what's happened literally recently with the storming of one of the Delhi offices. That's never good news for a media organization such as Twitter. But let's look at that in particular. What does the Indian government ask these people to do in simple terms, and what clearly are they not doing?
Well, I think there are a lot of global news a couple of months back, and there was an exposed toolkit about Break India conspiracy, which has been identified globally. It was exposed globally because one of the activists in the Netherlands, in her response, in her tweet, she accidentally attached her internal document, which was now called Break India Toolkit, as a response. So she made it public by mistake, and as a result, a couple of months back, there were a lot of people arrested in India because they were found in India, and a lot of people have been summoned who are outside India into the Indian courts for doing anti-India activities and planning it. And the toolkit has been so detailed that the exact dates and exact amount of money which will be spent on the road and on the social media, both are defined so well. And those events which are written in these toolkits are synchronized very well with actual events. So it is it is a proof in a sense. So at that point in time, Indian government came out with some regulations, and it is very simple. You know, these are very simple regulations. They said that you have to regulate yourself. We don't want to impose any laws on you, because we want to maintain freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of everyone's ability to speak out. So they don't want to curb anything, and that's why they said you have to self-regulate yourself. And that was a simple laws. And in order to do that, they said there was only 3 demands. They said that you have to appoint an officer who will actually enable you do that, and that officer must be an Indian, based in India. He can be a foreigner, but he should be based in India. He cannot be based in New Zealand and make governance as per Indian laws. So obviously these new positions have to be created, new people have to be identified, who will then own the legal liability. Because in such cases, if the social media has been found to spread lies, and I just want to add to what you said before I started talking, Neville. These guys are now known as intermediary. They are not known as a media house anyway. So since they are intermediary as per the laws, their responsibility lies to delete any information which has been multicasted. I wouldn't say broadcasted, because the social media has the ability to multicast the fake news. Then as per the Indian law, it is the responsibility of Twitter, Facebook and WhatsApp to delete that information and penalize those people who are either forwarding those information or creating those. So this is the basic simple demand, and this is a background in short term.
And as you say, you know, just picking up that last point, the whole purpose here is to eliminate fake news, is to actually give people the facts. And interestingly enough, you know, the Indian government isn't unique in this. It does things that actually they get it wrong. So what I don't think we're saying here is we need to be suppressing all of the whistleblowers that are actually trying to deliver the facts and hold governments to account. So I don't think that's, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it from this high position of the ivory tower in government. But I'd also like to go back to this toolkit. And when it first came out, I think I was a little surprised that someone had been a little careless in putting out the IP of the organization, because that's what it was. It was very clever, very coordinated PR document about if this happens, this, then this, then this, then this. And we can see how orchestrated any PR needs to be, any marketing needs to be. You don't take this and, you know, you don't put a little video out there and just hope it goes viral. You know, you get your friends to go and like it and share it and get feedback on it. And that's how things go viral. And I don't think that the toolkit, in many respects, despite the fact they actually gave some pretty detailed inside knowledge of what this particular company was doing, I don't think it was doing anything that any normal group organization would do. It's just the fact that it was made very public. So I suppose my comment in all of that is a little silly to have put it out there in the first place, because you clearly, it means you don't understand what you've got in front of you and how important it is. And the other thing is, under confidentiality, it was part of the organization's intellectual property. I mean, these are normally covered under confidentiality statements. which is at the very heart of what we're talking about here. It's about personal information not being shared in the public domain, or information being shared in the public domain that's not true. So I think the whole issue around this so-called toolkit has just made me smile in an obtuse type of way, because I can't believe that people didn't realize this was going on anyway.
Well, I think it's very funny also. Like you said, you're not using this word, but I am, because I'm an Indian. It's so funny. It's something like, for the first time, we were able to catch the conspirators red-handed, because people who were, it was a Google Doc, and instructions were being given with dates and time and the amount of money which will be paid. All that is recorded in the document, and it was a privately shared document among people. And because of that, all those people are now red-handed and they're caught. So earlier we used to only make conspiracy theories and maybe make some movies and all that, because nothing to prove what we are saying. So now it's a proof, and I think it's foolishness, because somebody tried to ask this person a question, and out of her emotions, in terms of her belief system, because she probably believed it, whatever has been fed to her, she believed that seriously, and she said, okay, here you go, take it, read it for yourself. So she sort of believed this as evidence, that toolkit which has been created by conspirator. And if you remember, the Spectre organization of Mission Impossible is something like that.
Spectre, James Bond, it is. I mean, but the thing is, this, these directors and writers of movies have probably got closer to the facts than you or I, than the general public. And they're trying to make it interesting. They're into the entertainment arena. But the reality of life is, a lot of this does go on in real life. There is cameras, there is facial recognition. There is trying to chase your customer. When someone lands on your website, they capture a cookie. And now it says, this is our cookie policy. Do you agree with it? Well, if you say no, you get booted off the website. You're not allowed to go through it. So this is not, I don't think this is rocket science. I think, I use the word silly, perhaps stupid comes to mind. But it's actually not, to me, it's not understanding what you've got in front of you. And I think that's half the problem. And when you're in an organization such as these are, and you've got what this is quite damaging in many respects. I mean, that particular document was how to undermine a government. And you can only imagine that this has been used time and time and time again. I mean, it's a toolkit, It's something that you can download and then apply all of your particular marketing issues. And it is a bit like mafia, really. It's having inside here, inside there. It's a complete chronology of events, who gets paid what, who's on the payroll, who isn't on the payroll. I wonder, CK, if you went down there and you saw the initial CK by some huge rupee payment. I didn't, so I don't expect you did either. But again, some of these documents are encrypted. The little black book approach to a spy or an insider or even a salesperson. They've always got an angle on someone else, and it's a question of what you're going to use and when you're going to use it. So I think this whole toolkit issue has really brought out Pandora's box. But for those that work in big business, it's almost like, so what? I mean, we know this. It's a bit stupid to actually give, dot the I's and cross the T's and almost give a direct line of sight to not just individual names, but addresses. You may as well just, package it up and send it to the CIA or or the MI5 or whoever, because it becomes a very, very specific, special, internal and not public document. And I guess the whole issue today is when you make these things public, why are you doing it? What's the motivation here? And let's talk a little bit about whistleblowers. I wasn't called a whistleblower, but I was known of being one in an organization because I wanted to make sure that we did the right thing. And I would put my head above the parapet and say it many times. I don't believe that's right. I don't believe that's what we should be doing. I think we should do this in a slightly different way. Or at least if that's the absolute outcome, then we need to mitigate risk assessment of, what's going to happen with it. And on a few occasions, CK, I can tell you now, I walked away. I didn't want to be part of it. And made my voice, well known. Now, lives were never at risk, as some of the issues on COVID around today. So that was one thing, but it was the company's future that was at risk. And like anything else, my spreadsheet said something, their spreadsheet said something else, and we, I suppose, agreed to disagree. But I wouldn't be party. My integrity was pretty sound. I wouldn't be party to going down a particular route if I didn't believe in it. I'd just withdraw. And it's difficult to do that. I know it's difficult to do that in a toxic environment, or when your job depends upon your compliance to the organization. Your salary is dependent upon you doing as you're told. It's really difficult to do.
Neville, let me add to what you are saying. It's very difficult for normal people, but then if you have a deal with the devil, then you have to sell your soul. So this is exactly what happens. This is exactly what happens. When you take money for something which is not legal, then you're caught in the web. They will ask you to do a small thing. You will think, hey, what's the harm? Let me take this and write few lines and that's it. And then first assignment will give you $100. The next one will be more paying, more difficult. And then you keep, getting entangled into that. So this is exactly what happened with these activists who actually exposed this toolkit. And it is a lot of people got exposed. In fact, I remember 3 months back when this whole news exploded in India. A lot of business people from United States are involved who have arms dealer, those kind of people are funding this. So a lot of names that have come in the public arena. There could be a lot of names which are still not revealed by the government, but government knows everything. Now, it is also alleged that the social media, knowing these things, are propagating and allowing these things to happen. And that is a charge of the government, and they have been summoned because WhatsApp is used to multiply the fake news arena, and also Twitter, because Twitter has ability to snowball because of this share and reshare facility. And Twitter has been openly refusing to follow government guidelines. So for past 1 week, there has been a big debate happening in India on the social media again, that some of these social media may be asked to close down. And these are, believe me, large names which will be asked to close down because of non-compliance. So this is going to happen. So when you talk about whistleblowing, and when you are an intermediary social media platform, your role has to be understood properly. Your role is to facilitate the whistleblower. But if something which is falling in the arena of fake news, your responsibility as per your use policy is you will actually delete the spams, penalize the people who are spreading spams, and also take action on it. So refusing to take action, that means you are accomplice. So this is exactly what is happening here in India.
Yeah, and it's really not good news, is it? I mean, fundamentally, we do not want. I mean, if I were to read a propaganda paper day in, day out, I believe the propaganda. I mean, that's what politics is all about. It's about, you know, what your belief system is. But if you never question anything and you take things for granted, and the problem is a lot of people never question what these platforms are saying because they take it for granted. It's like a newspaper. But actually, when you start to investigate and go deeper, just scratch the surface, there are very few facts around this. And as we know, I mean, the key element here is the fundamental, you know, issue about leadership is being aware of the facts. And if you have to fill in the gaps, use your experience to fill in the gaps. And if the gaps are far bigger than the data that you really know as fact, then you're in a big risk arena because you just don't know what's happening. So when it comes down to the bigger issue of leadership, you know, we want to know the facts. And if I then make a decision on those facts, then I can be held accountable. But if the facts have got so many holes, like Swiss cheese, huge holes in it, then you delay decisions. It's as simple as that, because sometimes you just can't fill in the holes. You're out of your comfort zone. You're having to imagine things might happen. And that fundamentally is one of the reasons why we need to be holding these platforms to account to ensure that they're giving the truth. I'm not talking about, you know, some, you know, little tittle tattle that might be going on. But we're talking about big worldwide issues, big country issues, global warming, etc., etc. And, you know, some people out there, you know, even now, I was sent a page on the Facebook website that said the Earth was flat. And it wasn't even from the Flat Earth Society. It was someone, you know, in the middle of nowhere that just threw a paper out there. Now, you might get someone reading that and saying, oh, yeah, I believe that. They're a professor, they've got this doctorate, that doctorate, and all of a sudden, it's fake news again. Now, I'm not for one saying that the Earth is flat, by the way, everybody, because it just isn't, plain isn't. And if you want to find that out, then literally just look at the way the sun moves. And as we all know, the sun moves around the Earth, doesn't it, CK? Fake news, fake news, fake news. That's alert, alert. You know, we move around the sun. It's been proven many, many times by scientists, mathematicians, but you can do a little sundial experiment, you know, in your own garden, and you can prove that actually we move around the sun because of the shape of things that happen. But anyway, that's a different story. So today's subject, whistleblowing, fake news, closing down social media platforms that are propagating literally untruths. But the main thing is it starts with us. So our message today to everybody is, don't believe everything that someone says. Challenge it, question it, you know, prove it to yourself. And once you've proven it to yourself, then put it into your belief system. And then you don't have to go back to it because you know it's true. And if someone then challenges it, you just ignore it because you know it's true. Unless there's some new information that comes to light that challenges that belief system. In which case then, you better start listening.
Well, Neville, this gives me an idea. If you look at the Washington Post, the top of their newspaper where the name is written, they also mention that their news can be used as an evidence. So their confidence level is so high that they say that we have actually done the investigation, and you can use this news article as one of your investigation, evidence. So I think that's the level of confidence that Washington Post is demonstrating. I think there is a need for another platform today, which will filter out the real news from the fake news. I think there is an opportunity for somebody who wants to put in his money using AI or whatever technology and say that, you know, you connect your Facebook to my platform, your Twitter and everything to my platform, and I will only showcase what is real and remove all the fake updates from your Facebook, from your Twitter, and from your LinkedIn. Isn't it? Does it sound like an idea?
Yeah, I mean, we all look forward to a day where there's this magical app that sits on our phone and just screens all the rubbish and puts it in the Bravo India November, as we call it, bin, trash can. So it doesn't even get to my ears. Of course, that needs a lot of AI, a lot of investment, but watch this space, because someone out there is thinking this very, very issue. As the inventor of the internet, do you know who the inventor of the internet is? Where its source is? Who created it?
It was from UK. Suddenly his name is out of my mind.
It's hyphenated, a guy called Tim Berners-Lee.
Yes.
And he has, for several years, said, the internet is out of control. We need to give back control to who the internet was for. And the internet was for you and me. It was for us. Not to be hijacked by toolkits, by mafia operation, by any form of, let's call it terrorism in its widest sense, fanatics out there. It was for you and me to share information openly and honestly, to get the best information you can, have it on tap, so that it was the right fact. It was true facts. And unfortunately, as he keeps saying for several years, it's been hijacked. We need to take it back. And maybe, the Indian government are on his side. I mean, maybe they've got their own toolkit running somewhere. And they're in discussions in the back cave about taking back the internet. But we'll see. I have a feeling something is happening. Privacy is a massive issue around the world. I don't think people realize how much you can see about yourself, despite the fact you think you're a very private individual. What I suggest to everyone today is put your name in Google and see what happens.
Absolutely, Neville. And in fact, the trouble starts when the social media starts saying, hey, we don't follow your guidelines, your regulations, and still when you have half the income coming from India and you don't follow the rules of the land, and they keep actually giving the blue ticks. So there is a blue tick, and can you imagine, Neville, I just want to tell everyone that, our handle has about 40,000 views every month. It's not too great. It's not a couple of 100,000, but it's like 40,000. And we had applied for blue tick. We were refused by both Instagram and by Twitter. Whereas there are these blue ticks who are spreading fake news. And when government actually goes and say that, so what is the meaning of blue tick? Blue tick is that you have verified, you have done the address.
The Washington Post. Yeah, Washington Post. They stand by it. You can use it in the courts. I mean, that's to me is what journalism should be all about. I mean, that's what the newspapers, that's what media should be doing. You can take our information as fact. We may our journalists may be using a little flowery language from time to time, but the facts are facts. We haven't flowered up the facts.
Absolutely. I think this topic is very big and we can keep throwing a lot of examples here. But thank you so much, Neville, for coming to our show today and finding time to discuss this very, very pertinent subject. But we will catch up because this story is still evolving. The June will be an interesting month, and I will catch up with you on the same subject again in month of June.
Oh, this will run and run. Have a good day, everybody. Cheerio.
We have some unique Akulmek memorabilia which will make you look outstanding. The graphics on these corporate gifts are based on the global best business practices. To become recipient of one of these gifts for free, you have to watch this video till the end and provide your valuable comments. Or you can also share your experiences. The person who makes the best comment would be chosen to become a recipient of this beautiful Akulmak gift, absolutely free, delivered to your doorsteps. The winner would also get a chance to be invited live as a distinguished panelist during our next video. What are you waiting for, friends? Please subscribe Akulmak and smash that like button.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Hello friends, this is Chandra from Akulmak Technologies. Welcome to Top Brass. Today, we are joined by Mr. Ramesh Krishnan, who is a business development and channel leaders, and he's working for a security company based in San Francisco. Welcome to the show, Ramesh.
Hey, good evening, CK. How are you? It's nice to see you.
Yes, Ramesh. In fact, what I feel is that this lockdown situation that is affecting the globe has brought people together even before what we were. And look at you, both of us. We are talking after a decade.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. First of all, thank you for reaching out. It's been ages. I think it's been 15 years, more than a decade and a half. When we last, we were colleagues, and we remained in touch. But I've been back here for quite a while, and it's nice to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk to you.
Same here. You're looking as energetic and as jovial as ever, Ramesh. Please keep it up.
Well, that's very kind of you. It's still only 8:30, 8:45 in the morning over here. Give it a few more hours. I mean, after I, get through the day and, do a little bit of things on the weekend, maybe at that time, I don't know about the energy part. One has to maintain a sense of humor about a lot of things. So thanks for saying that. And you look very well, man. You don't look like any different than what I have seen you. It doesn't look like you've aged at all. I mean, I lost all my hair, but
yeah, so I think I can share some secret. I do cycling to work about 60 kilometers every week. That's my routine. So I have made my routine, and even in this lockdown, I have a cycle at home, so I keep cycling. And from when we were together, I was working for you as part of your team member. From that point, I've lost about 17 kgs.
So we have something in common. Saturday mornings, I normally do a bike ride between about anywhere from 30 miles to about 50 miles. It's going to rain today, so can't bike. So I love bike all the time. So, that's my excuse for not biking. But there are other things that you do. I have a big park right behind my home where I live, and not too far from, we're about 40 miles south of San Francisco. But as you know, I live in these days, the entire planet is kind of in a situation which we have never been confronted. And for some of us, working from home has been pretty business as usual. You remember, I used to have a home office, back when you and I were colleagues. I mean, and so for 20 plus years, I've had a home office, and work from home has been part of that regimen for me. So the work from home is not new. But what's new is that now the work from home is actually a shared work from home, right? I mean, so like everybody else, I have a family. My wife is also a healthcare professional who works for a large hospital locally, and as a researcher. And then my daughter is home. Her schooling is now all online. So there is always, now it's a shared work from home. So everybody's got their vantage points. We've got to share not just the living space, but also the bandwidth. I mean, and these days bandwidth has become kind of the most precious commodity for a lot of people. Everybody's on video calls, so obviously, it puts a lot of strain on the network. And then when you take breaks and especially if you have a teenager. I mean, they do have their little social, interactions with their friends, and plus Netflix is a big thing, right? So they consume that. So it's kind of brought a very new way of sort of the work-home, work-life balance in terms of how people are taking their day-to-day activities. So that's the most interesting thing that is going on. I do not know if you're aware. I live in Santa Clara County, which is one of the largest counties in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we were the first ones to go into what is called a very restricted shelter in place directive, which means the schools were closed. I mean, all educational institutions, anything that is non-essential was pretty much closed. So none of the malls are open, etc. And so it's a very different. So we just completed our third week in shelter in place. And what we have seen is that the social distancing, and I'd say it's actually more of physical distancing. I think socially people are becoming far more active. Our own example, we have connected after 15 years. Well, we should have been connected before, but did we do that because the world is going through a shutdown, lockdown? It's called different things. It's all the same thing, right? I mean, we are all pretty much in a very restricted physical moment outside. But what it has done is it's restricted the physical distancing, which is a very good thing. Socially, I think people are coming more closer together virtually without being face to face. So that's what's really going on. And in Santa Clara, what has happened is that we had to do this first because we were the largest number of the virus incidents, number of reported cases, etc. That actually came out in the Bay Area was in Santa Clara. So we had to do this first. But the good news is because we shut the county down first, even ahead of the country, our curve and I don't want to call it a trend, it's only 2-week data. So it will become a trend over time. But right now the sign is that we seem to be on a flatter curve relatively versus other parts of the country and even other parts of the world. I don't know, how has it been for you?
Yes, so in India, it is a very strict lockdown. In fact, we have cops patrolling the streets. There are very heavy fines, and there is a new law which is imposed, which is a disaster. I mean, there is a new law which is now running, which is which is applicable during the disasters. So nobody is allowed to walk on the street, but things are coming to us. So life is not changed. Essentials services are running smoothly. Um, but I think I would like to ask you, because you have 3 decades of experience, and none of us have seen this kind of situation ever in life, at least our generation. My parents have seen the lockdown during the war, but I think none of us have seen it. Neither you would have seen this kind of a situation. What do you think from your point of view? Will this change the way we do business, or do you think that life will become normal after a few days?
I think it's a matter of perspective. So I was a little child when that last aggression in India happened. And as you know, I was raised in India. And, when we had what was called blackouts, and if you talk to your parents, they will tell you we had to black tape, we had to put this black paper, like a cardboard paper on our ventilators, in the homes. And in Delhi homes, we used to have a ventilator which was all the way on the top of the ceiling and all that. So the cars going with the half blackened headlamps actually started at that time. So we used to have a lockdown from 6 p.m. in the evening till 6 a.m. And there were trenches dug in every park. So if you talk to that generation, they will tell you. And I was a little child, so I do have memories of it. But like you said, the world hasn't seen anything like this before. See, there it was a very different thing, right? I mean, you had an identified physical aggression that was happening. Right now, what has happened is that there is a virus that is out there which is not discriminating based upon the color of a person, or the race of a person, or the culture of a person, or border, where this can just pretty much now permeate itself into the ecosystem that we broadly call the globe, right? So I think we are faced with a common enemy, which is the virus. I mean, and it has been a wake-up call for the entire planet. And for a change, what I am there are pluses and minuses. The good thing is that there seems to be at least a coalescence of ideas globally in terms of how do we beat this. There are countries that are sharing their data, it's out there, and you know how many people have been affected. Countries are shutting borders not because they don't want to trade with others, they just want to prevent the further proliferation of this virus. So I think it is causing a lot of anxiety for a lot of people just because it's uncharted. These are really uncharted waters for a lot of people, for the majority of the globe, irrespective of how old or young you might be. And I think to your question, is it going to change the way we do business? I think here's what's going to happen, right? I mean, we do not know for certainty when business as usual or business as we knew it or life as we knew it is going to go back into that into that particular approach or that way of living, right? A lot of ways, if you look at it more from a sort of soul searching or spirituality perspective, you say, well, did the human beings do this to the planet by so much growth and such rapid, sort of expectations, or trying to grow beyond a certain rate? And does it have to really be that? I mean, can we not sort of contain some of that, and so that we can be a far more cohesive global community? I mean, take an example, for instance. Prior to coronavirus, what were we hearing? We were hearing about bad incidents happening all around the world, whether it's got to do with a small minority element that goes and decides to, either kill some people or whatever it is that they do. I think that type of heinous crime is completely, we don't hear it. I mean, can you even tell me where, on which channel that you can go and hear something like that, right? So I'm not saying that this is the antidote to killing things like terrorism and all that, but my point is that I think it's, I get the message, if I were sitting in other parts, I would say, we can actually work with each other despite the differences that we have, so that we can bring down the incidence of any kind of border aggressions and what you have, but just sort of simply working with each other. I mean, so that's maybe the positive that has come out. Now, will it change the way we work in the future? I think this will definitely have an impact on how we go about doing our daily business. Uh, you know, so, and I think from a family structure perspective, I think a lot of families have started enjoying this time together. I mean, they are carving out family time versus work time, etc. So maybe this is in a way more social integration within a family, a nuclear family. It's also more social integration, keeping in touch with friends with whom you might have never spoken for 10 years or 15 years or whatever. That on the social side, that would change. What do you think?
So, in my opinion, I feel that this is going to continue for some more time, because the virus is not going to vanish so soon. And but my more pertinent question is that if the virus is not going away, then we will always suspect the other person. We can always say, because of the social distancing, but we can get into virtual closeness, because we can't talk to the other person or meet the other person. So there could be some opportunities or new way of doing business or new application opportunities for various organizations and stuff like that. That is what I feel.
Well, so two things, right? I mean, for a large portion of at least the technologies and the industries that I have been and you have been, we conduct a lot of business. Like, for instance, my job is global, and I don't travel all the time to go meet somebody who is sitting in, say, Asia Pac or Africa or Middle East or Latin America. A lot of times it is through a video call or a phone call. I mean, the thing that has changed is there are more video calls now than there were before, only because there is that closeness. You see, the visual impact of a conversation is actually far more valuable than just a pure, voice that is at an end of a wire or wireless or whatever you want to call it, right? So I think a large portion of the technology world, at least, and a large portion of that large global business has been conducting itself virtually for a long time. We've just not been so aware of it. Now that the situation is forced on us, we think, oh my God, I mean, like, what is this? We have to do business this way. Actually, it's not that. It's just more that we are using the virtual technology real time to conduct business, right? I mean, we've always done that. We just never mentally thought about it, right? This is making us think about it.
Right.
The other thing I'll say is I'm a glass half full guy. So you have to hold hope. So this is not going to be a permanent situation. We all know that. There are vaccines being developed, which will not be available this year, but will definitely be available next year. So if you think that people are going to avoid each other because I don't know that you have the virus or not, you got to think about it. The world overcame smallpox. Okay, how did the world do that, right? How did we do that? Through a vaccine, right? I mean, so when there can be mandates, like India has done a great job, I think, in terms of locking down the entire country, and there is a discipline around it, right? And would you imagine that 1 billion+ people can actually do that? Well, you are living it, so you know it. It's different, yes, in the rural area. I understand that there is a challenge with the migrant workers and all that, but despite that, there is law enforcement that is actually helping people without sort of going after somebody, right? And adhering to the rules. So I do believe that people will not be that hesitant to shake hands. As you develop a vaccine over time, it may take us time. I'm not saying this is going to happen in like June and July or end of this year. I'm saying that there is a long-term view that we have to take a look, right? Where people will get far more comfortable with each other in terms of the physical interaction along with the social interaction. I don't think that'll be so much of a challenge, but it will take time to get there. Yeah, will there be hesitation for parents of young kids to send their kids back to a daycare? Yeah, you can understand why. We are all parents. You know, the research thus far shows that this is only targeting a certain age group. I don't think so. I don't think a virus really cares. I mean, maybe the child has a greater immunity to it, and that's a different matter. So, it can be debated. There are a lot of science. There are a lot of scientists and doctors who will tell you, no, children are not, they have immunity, but they cannot be immune to everything, right? So, I think there will be a slow kind of trajectory in which that will start happening. I don't think it'll be that bad though. I don't think people will avoid each other and things like that over time. But we don't know. The challenge is, how do you predict when that will happen?
So let's hope that this gets over soon. In the meanwhile, if there are new opportunities, there are entrepreneurs who are who are thinking of doing new innovations. They are most welcome to do innovations to help public by and large. But more important, I would like to say that it was such a great pleasure talking to you, Ramesh, and hearing your voice after a decade, or maybe more than a decade. And really appreciate your advices and your insight on this issue. So thank you so much.
No, my pleasure too. Thanks for reaching out. And I agree with you. It's going to create a lot of innovation for a lot of people. Out of necessity, out of crisis comes, ideas. And they always say necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I'm sure there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are going to come up with some amazing technologies and ways of doing business, even non-technical, etc. And I'm very positive that will happen. I appreciate you reaching out. It's good to hear you, see you, and chat with you. And I look forward to more interactions in future.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Certainly, Ramesh, I think we have lockdown few more days left. Today is day 12. There are a few more days left. So we will find another opportunity to talk to you to check out how things are, because your county has done already tremendous job to contain the virus. We'll check on you after a week or so. Again.
Sure. We are locked down till May 3rd, at least, if not longer. So, we have a long way to go.
I will always catch you here.
Take care.
Take care and be safe. Be positive.
Yeah. Same here. Stay safe and be well. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Assimilate Technologies, and today we have a very important topic for discussion in the legal matters, and this is concerning the government functioning and their buildings and their infrastructure, which is also known as Capital Vista. And to discuss this further, let me invite my friend from Ahmedabad, a very eminent lawyer, Mr. Jeet Bhatt.
Thank you, Chandrakant, for having me today in this discussion of the judgment of the Supreme Court in the Central Vista redevelopment and modification challenge. And I'm looking forward for this discussion with you.
Right, Jeet. So before we start the legal aspect, I just want to give a little bit of preface to why this development is important for a country like India. So very briefly, I just tell the viewers that when the India got independence in 1947, the number of representatives in the parliament were decided on the basis of the population, and the population has almost like three times from that day in last 70 years, whereas the representatives in the parliament have not gone up. So it is like 530 and odd in the lower house, and about half of their strength in the upper house. So about 700 and odd uh, people are representing the Indians in the uh, judiciary or the Parliament of India. So, uh, the whole issue of expansion has been known to the Indian government for last 30 to 40 years, even before that. And the reason being that for some reason or the other, this expansion of the parliament was postponed. And at the same time, during the British Raj, a lot of Maharajas were having their palaces, summer palaces, when they come to meet the vice chancellor, viceroys of India. They used to live in their own palace in the New Delhi area, which are now very old buildings. Some of them are almost like 250 years old, which requires the sort of renovation. And after the independence, these palaces were converted into various government buildings. So I think the government officers, when they are working from these buildings, they are at risk. So there are two aspects to the Central Vista redevelopment. One is expansion of the parliament, which is mandatory because the current parliament does not have space for extra member of parliament to accommodate. We need to expand. And why it is so critical? Because right now, one MP represents nearly 3 million Indians. If you do the math, which is very high, and 3 million cannot be adequately represented in the parliament. So that is why we need to increase the member of parliament, uh, and that will also have the democratic process. So I think that is a whole basis of this government going ahead with the redevelopment of central government buildings, which is also known as Central Vista. And recently there has been a judgment by the Supreme Court also. So I think uh, I will have Jeet talk more about it. So Jeet, over to you.
Yes, Chandrakant, you rightly said that this modification and redevelopment of the Central Vista is very much required today because when we became independent, our population was less than half of what is today. And at that time, uh, uh, around 530, which is the legislature which are in the lower house, are not adequate as they represent 3 million people in the country. So that was what was the object and aim behind having this redevelopment of the entire Central Vista and having a modern ultra-tech parliament. And as you are aware that this Central Vista lies in the heart of the capital in Delhi, within the Lutyens Bungalow zone, where the Central Vista is located between the India Gate and the Rashtrapati Bhavan. And the parliament, which was originally started construction in the year 1927, is a 93-year-old structure. And post 1971 census, where the total population of India was recorded around 54 crores, and the number of seats of the house was fixed at 545. But today the population has spiraled exponentially, and it is approximately more than 130 crore mark. And therefore, certainly it is required to have changes in the number of parliament, the member of parliament. and which is expected to happen in 2026. And therefore, the present central hall of the parliament, which has a seating capacity of only 440 persons, which already falls short of the present need to accommodate members of both houses together during a joint session. And there is no scope to expand the existing central hall. And therefore, it was decided by the central government to construct a new parliament building with a futuristic approach, and the House of People being 3 times the size of the present number. So certainly, this was very much required, and is a huge project. And the planning, which has been conceptualized, is that this will be opened in on the 75th Independence Day of the country in 2022, which is within 2 years, when the global G20 summit is also to be hosted by India in the same year. So the objective of this redevelopment plan was to have a new parliament building with space and technology to meet the present and emerging needs of vibrant Indian democracy. Also, to have a common central secretariat with all ministries in a single location for efficiency and synergy in functioning. Because as you said, that some of the offices are more than 100 years old structures, and also the government is paying a huge rent for all these offices. And therefore, it is desirable to have a common central secretariat with all ministries at one location for convenience as well as for efficiency and for saving the cost. And the third purpose was the Central Vista to be redeveloped as a world-class public space and venue for national and international events. So certainly, this is very much required and important project of the central government, which is very much essential to the democracy of this country. So the development, what was coming in the way, and what some of the petitions were filed before Delhi High Court, and ultimately it were transferred to the Supreme Court, and thereafter the Supreme Court finally coming out with a judgment 4 days ago on 5th of January, permitting the government to go ahead with this Central Vista redevelopment plan. The objections that were raised were basically that there was a change in land use of 8 plots, which were earmarked for redevelopment, and it came in the way of the Development Act, Delhi Development Act, and also with respect to certain clearances from the CBC, as well as certain clearances from the Heritage Site Board, also with regards to the environmental issues and environmental clearances required by the environmental notification, and also with regards to the principle of public trust, and uh, also with regards to providing necessary information to the public domain, as the petitioners had alleged that certain necessary information was not provided in the public domain, which ultimately led to uh, the redevelopment in a clandestine manner by the government, not bringing out all necessary steps, which was against the democratic principles. So all these issues were dealt with by the Honorable Supreme Court in its judgment. And the Supreme Court, with regards to all these issues, negative the contention of the petitioner, and ultimately in its concluding para observes that the Supreme Court declares that there is no infirmity in the grant of no objection by the Central Vista Committee, that is the CVC. Then the approval by the Delhi Urban Art Commission as per 1973 Act is correct. The prior approval of the Heritage Conservation Committee under the clauses of the building bylaws for Delhi are also correct. It also holds that the exercise of power by the central government under Section 11A2 of the Delhi Development Act is just and proper, and thus the modifications regarding the change in land use of plot number 2 to 8 in the master plan are also confirmed. It further recommends, with, with regards to the environmental clearance by expert appraisal committee, and grant thereof by the Ministry of Environmental Affairs is just, proper, and in accordance with law, including the 2006 notification. And therefore, the Supreme Court upheld the same, along with appropriate directions therein, to ensure that the highlighted mitigating measures are followed by the project proponent in their letter and spirit. The project proponent may set up smog towers to adequate capacity as being integral part of the new parliament building project, and additionally use smoke guns at the construction site throughout the construction phase in the progress of the site. Uh, so ultimately, the Supreme Court, by a majority of two judges, upheld the entire redevelopment plan by issuing certain directions and also declaring that the proper approvals and objections were taken by the government in finalizing this plan. So that is what the Supreme Court has held. Also, with regards to the principle of sustainable development and with regards to environment and development, the Supreme Court has observed uh, that environment and development are not sworn enemies of each other, and it would be anomalous approach to consider environment as a hurdle in development and vice versa. The entities like Environment Appraisal Committee and the National Green Tribunal are created to strike a just balance between two competing interests, and a time-tested principle of striking this balance is timely invocation of mitigating environmental measures amidst a development activity. But it says that sustainable development and precautionary principles need to be understood in a proper context, and the expression sustainable development incorporates wide meaning within its soul. It contemplates that development ought to be sustainable with the idea of preservation of natural environment for present and future generation. Because it says that it is the duty of the present generation to think about the future generation with regards to environment. So it also holds that the right to development is an inalienable human right by virtue of which every human person and all peoples are entitled to participate in, contribute to, and enjoy economic, social, cultural, and political development in which all human rights and fundamental freedoms can be fully realized. So, right to development is a part of human right which is inalienable and is available to all citizens, and without which all other fundamental freedoms cannot be fully realized. So certainly development is one of the most important aspect, and considering that the India is at this stage in, and considering that it's going to be one of the most developed nations in the world in coming years, such type of development projects are extremely important for the country, for the present and the future. The only thing is that it has to ensure that the environmental protection is also ensured. So this is what the Supreme Court has held. With regards to change in use of land, also the Supreme Court holds that the master plan does not say that there cannot be no change in change in use of land, and therefore it holds that it is incomprehensible as to how the proposed changes would be termed as substantial enough to alter the basic identity of the plan, or for that matter of the zone concerned. So because the changes in the plan was basically that the plot numbers 2 to 8, which was what also be changed, is that they were reserved originally for transportation, that is for bus parking, terminal, etc., for recreational purpose, for public and semi-public facilities, but which were now to be changed into having government offices and also recreational and government offices. So this was the only change in the plan. So the Delhi Development Act itself provides that the change in plan should not alter should not be so substantial it alters the entire plan itself. But the Supreme Court held that this does not alter the entire plan, and therefore this was permissible, and it was done after taking necessary permission. So this is what the Supreme Court has held in the Central Vista judgment.
Thank you very much, Jeet, for explaining this in detail for the benefit of our viewers. And also, I'd like to add that in 100 years, the technology has improved almost like 10 times. So what was applicable 100 years back is obsolete now. So with government, it's not only the parliament; it has a Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is the resident for the President of India, and then there are in the Vista there is a provision to also build houses for vice president as well as for the prime minister. And at this point in time, very close by, there are various ministries which exist in different buildings, and this infrastructure like rail ministry, finance ministry, just to name a few, Sena Bhavan, which manages the army affairs. So for every ministry there is a dedicated ministry building nearby, and these are the 12 to 15 buildings actually govern Indian government. So they roll out all the plans, they roll out all the bureaucracy around the entire country. So it is very important to have a new system, more secure system, while keeping a balance. So I think this is the first step, building the larger parliament, and I think we should not stop there. We should also revamp all these ministry buildings, build a very secure infrastructure around them, and wherever there is a need to move between different government buildings, because people go from one building to other every time and then there are a lot of security involved and there is a lot of wastage of time. I have experienced this myself while pursuing some of these opportunities with the government. To enter this building, it takes about 4 to 5 hours because of the security clearance. So I think the central vista concept is very important, because then the entire infrastructure can be secured, and then you can move around using tunnels underground without impacting the environment. So I think there is a huge need to revamp the Indian governance system and all the ministries, especially when we are such a large country with so much of bureaucracy involved in running the day-to-day activity of the country. At the same time, having more member of parliament to represent Indians will also be beneficial for the federal system of the country. This is what I feel as a layman, without even I'm just talking in English, not talking anything in legal terms. But what is your opinion, Jeet?
Yes, absolutely. Because as the judgment itself mentions that today the country's population has increased to so many fold times, and it is more than 130 crores, and the entire country is being governed from this central vista, and therefore certainly it requires to be modern. It has to have adequate capacity, and also it requires to be up to date. And considering that in future, the future prospects, also it has to be redeveloped and modified. So certainly it's a welcome judgment, and hope that the construction and redevelopment completes by uh, before the 75th Independence Day, and it can reopen and welcome the G20 summit, which is to be hosted by India.
Yes, Jeet, in fact, there are new gadgets being implemented, new systems being implemented in the new parliament, and it's going to be completely paperless to start with. Everything will be recorded. There will be new type of surveillance system. And what I've heard, what I've read in the papers, and what I've heard on the news is that there will be a separate entrance for president, and there will be separate entrance for prime minister, and for vice president, and for ministers. So the parliament will have adequate meeting rooms, so that people, who want to meet the member of parliament will have adequate rooms, meeting rooms, etc., to be available. Because right now there is a huge shortage, and adequate justice is not given to the system. So I think it's very important for us to move to a new parliament. And also from security point of view, considering there was a parliament attack way back in the early part of previous decade, I think it's important to have proper security for president, prime minister, and vice president. I think that is being provided here in the system. Um, Jeet, I think this is just a start. What do you say? I mean, there is an opportunity to convert the entire Central Vista, isn't it?
Um, well, that will be difficult because there are certain heritage sites, and Parliament is also a heritage site grade one. So it cannot be entirely well. It material changes can happen, but not a new entire development, because there has to be some restrictions on development in a heritage site. So considering those provisions, and with respect to environmental objections, otherwise within the permissible limits, everything can be changed.
Right. I think there is one building which I know for sure is the Rail Bhavan, which is extremely old, and from outside it looks very gorgeous and very jazzy because it looks like a palace. But from inside it is almost crumbling. There is a rail museum there, and there is a railway ministry operating from there. I think some of the buildings can be selected and can be revamped, because obviously railway is a very large ministry, requires it's one of the largest employer in the world, and requires a proper building.
No, absolutely. Yes, infrastructure offices are very much required, and if efficiency is ultimately increased by having good offices and infrastructure facilities, then certainly that is the need of the hour.
And it is a very remarkable judgment by the Supreme Court giving clearance to the starting the construction of the parliament, and it will be done in less than 18 months. So I'm sure they will use the latest construction technology, modular approach, best technology to not only build the infrastructure, which is earthquake proof, fire proof, and will have the latest gadgets, completely paperless. Um, with all new kinds of security, Wi-Fi, etc. So with this, we can end our discussion. Jeet, thank you very much for finding time and joining us in today's discussion. We will meet you next Thursday again in Legal Matters with something more interesting.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello friends, this is Chandra from Akulmac Technologies, and today I would like to draw your attention to the emails that your company or organization is sending to thousands and thousands and thousands of prospective buyers, and the return on investment on sending such emails is less than 0.0001%. All these emails are getting deleted. I personally delete hundreds of emails every day. I'm sure you're also deleting hundreds of emails. Some of the companies have set up the spam engines which filter all these emails out. Yet, most of the industry feels that this is the only mechanism to grow your business, by sending emails, by flooding somebody email boxes, by talking about your technology, your white paper, etc. At the same time, as a organization, we also need to understand what market needs, and it's not what we are selling. So we have to bring to certain agreement between the buyer or seller, or demand or supply, where we bring these two parties together, where the demand is fulfilled by the supply. And it is not necessarily means that you keep sending emails. By sending thousands and thousands of emails every day, every week, you start generating business leads out of that. The reality is, the cost of sending 5 email today, in today's money, is more than $2 to $3. And then suppose you send 50,000 emails, probably you will receive responses from only 100. So the efficiency of the system is now going down. I think the time has come for organizations to look at alternative methods of generating your sales leads. Then another thing that has happened in the field, that is the emergence of Me Too service providers, because the cost of providing different services and different sort of new generation activities, the time has come to also rethink their strategy in terms of how all different companies want to position themselves. If it is sort of a Me Too email that is going out, the chances are your email will get deleted. So the requirement of today's world is not to send emails, by finding out new methods of communication with your prospects. Number two, offer something which is which is very appealing, and it is not Me Too. So you have to look at what are you doing today, and where you want to achieve, and by doing these activities that you are doing to achieve your goal. So to address these issues, we have created a platform which will solve many of these challenges, and it will give you a platform which will allow you to be more creative. You can reach out to your clients without spending a dime. You can reach out to your prospects without collecting the client database, building client database, building expensive sales and marketing campaigns. You can still appeal to them. The platform website is listed here, as you can see where my finger is. So I encourage you to visit this website and explore. This is a very low cost method where you can reach out to your prospects. You can create a differential for yourself. You can be non-intrusive. You can be creative. You can come out with new methods of communication rather than sending a HTML based emails using your CRMs and so on and so forth. So with these small messages, I would like to talk few things about my platform. The platform has two main features. One is it allows you to share your success stories and your ideas of innovation and so on and so forth, which necessarily may not be related to what you're offering. Because if you sell yourself, if you sell your idea, it will result in a business for you where you can actually pitch in what you have. So you can actually think creatively and come out with an offering which is appealing to the prospects. So this platform allows you to do that. Second thing is it also allows you to your prospects to reach out to you directly without need of sending emails and building campaigns and building databases and so on and so forth. So it's a very intuitive method, low cost method to reach out to your prospects and also to your client, and it's non-intrusive, and you can come out with new methods of reaching, because you may think you would like to talk about your innovation. You may like to address your clients by way of a video. You would like to talk about your innovation in a group discussion, or you want to just write a lot of words and you distribute these documents. So all these things are available in our platform. So I invite you to experience this. Come to this website, explore functionality. Just in case if you have any question, reach out to me. My emails are also listed in the website, and then we can have a conversation. I will be more than happy to bring you on board. I will personally help you to get on board, how to use these functionality which are provided in the platform, and you can be more successful without spending a lot of money. So with this small message, I will look forward to you joining my platform, which will help you reduce your cost, increase your business, and it will give you avenue of reaching out to new prospects in a new way. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you.
Hello, friends. This is Akul Mac Live, and I am Chandrakant. So much bad news is now coming. You know, if you look at the top newspaper or read any mainstream media, you will have all the statistics. You will have all these, when the vaccination is coming. A lot of politics is being discussed openly. So the challenge for us is, how do we keep our positive outlook? How do we maintain that, we always have a good, events happening, going to happen beyond the horizon? How do we maintain that as a business leader? Or in fact, this is a hallmark of the leadership. So to discuss this very important subject, I have been joined by a very important, very senior industry colleague of ours, joining me from UK. So an outstanding show coming up. Friends, there is also a giveaway. So please stick around in the show. We will tell you in the end how you can claim your free gift. Friends, let us welcome our guest today. His name is Mike Bradley. He's joining us from UK and he is Group Chief Strategy Officer or RHF and Scale Up Arena. So we will welcome him without further ado and we will ask him a very, very specific leadership question today. Mike, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to you, Chandra. Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm very good, Mike, and fortunately the curve of infection has sort of flattened. It's still growing, but it is sort of flattened because of the lockdown, which was announced a couple of days back.
Right.
So
that's very positive news. That's very positive.
Yes. So I think the question today is...
keep our fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that continues.
The question really is how do we maintain a positive outlook or how do we remain positive with positive mind frame in the event of adversity? That's really the question for leaders and your advice for the leaders.
Absolutely. I also would phrase that as the art of true leadership, because I think anybody can lead when things are going well. But the mark of true example and leadership is when things are going badly, that person can still maintain the support and the spirit that enables somebody to overcome the challenge. So for me, that, maintaining a positive spirit in the face of adversity is the art of true leadership.
So much bad news and new mutation of corona. Because of that, people are having a lot of hindrance in their day-to-day activities. The strategy planning also is not working because what strategy to plan for what month. So all those of complexities are now coming up in the business. So what is your advice? How do we maintain a positive outlook towards our business?
Well, I think one of the first things that's most important is we must maintain a positive outlook. We must always look for the positives in every situation, because if you don't, it's a downward spiral and things will only get worse. So the trick, I believe, is to get up one more time than you get knocked down. So I think there are 3 E's that come to mind when it comes to overcoming adversity. There is endurance, obviously. There is endeavor, and there is endearment. And I think those 3 E's apply in all situations, obviously in business, but also in education, in family, in health, in government, and of course, least likely to occur is in the media. Because, and I think, let's start with the negatives around this first. The first thing to do if you want to maintain a positive spirit in the face of adversity is don't go and talk to the miserable people or the miserable leaders, because they will drag you down. They will bring you quite happily into their downward spiral staircase, and you'll all be going down to the abyss together. So the first thing to do is to avoid spending time with those people who are always on the negative. Second thing to avoid is to avoid taking the mainstream media too seriously. Because if we listen to the media or we read the media too much, they love a story. And there's an old expression that used to be, bad news travels like wildfire. What sells, what gets viewers, nothing better than a good old tragedy or some scandal. Some negativity will always get the attention. And a few years ago, there was a newscaster in the UK called Martin Lewis, and he basically was saying we should have more good news. And of course, he was very unpopular for saying this because, unfortunately, good old auntie does not like good news. They really like to stir things up. And so they'll always look for the negatives. So the second thing to avoid is the mainstream media. Don't expect to get up every day, read the paper, and then have a positive outlook, because you will be, disappointed. Because I can guarantee you, if you open up the front page of any Indian newspaper or any UK newspaper, particularly the red tops, as we call them, you will see a negative headline, because they love to drill into that. And of course, we all read these things, and we all, but what actually happens is nobody actually gets anywhere by focusing on the negatives. And I think, as an example, if wars start when both sides focus on the negatives, they seek revenge, okay? But the only way you ever resolve an argument or a challenge is to sit down with the other component parts, the other party, the other opposition, and say, how now can we solve this problem? It's only, and every war ends up with a sitting around the table of the two parties who originally started the war. So the crazy thing is, you have all this negativity in between, lots of deaths, lots of collateral damage. And at the end of the day, what solves the problem? Sitting around a table and seeking to find a positive way forward. So short circuit all that and start, I would suggest, with looking at the three positives I said, the three E's. So the first thing you have to do is obviously work hard, endeavor. Okay, so there is no point sitting in the middle of a room, head in hands. Oh dear, I've got a terrible situation. It's terrible. It's bad news. All I would say is stand up, get up, start trying to open the doors that you can see. You may get 9 doors slammed in your face, but the 10th door will be the one that opens. So the key to that is, leave no stone unturned. You as an individual, a leader, a worker, a member of the family, you are the only person that can change the situation to a positive. And you can only do that by trying to open the doors that are immediately in front of you. It's like nobody climbs a staircase by jumping to the top. You have to climb one step at a time. But who has to take that first step? You as an individual have to. So first of all, endeavor is vital. Yeah? Do you agree with that? And now I'll give you the next one.
Well, I think very good advice. So very important. Stay away from naysayers, negative people. Is absolutely essential for our own good. And also not look at the mainstream media too seriously. I mean, you can look at it, but not too seriously. But I have a question, Mike.
Exactly.
The question is that, people used to read the newspaper and whatever they can grab, and they used to call themselves information junkie. And what happens to those kind of people who have this urge of knowing what is going on? Current affairs, they have to know everything, every bit of it, because that helps them decide the next move. What happens to those kind of people?
Well, I would probably fall into the same category myself, actually, Chandra, because I spent, longer than I care to admit, several decades being very interested in current affairs and politics. So yeah, I'm one of those. I will read the the intelligent paper, I would say, not the red tops. I'll read a semi-intelligent paper at the weekends. I will always watch the news. My father used to be compulsive about watching it. He'd sort of watch the 1 o'clock and then watch the 6 o'clock maybe, and he may even get around to watching 10 o'clock as well. I don't think the stories was that varied. Even in his old age, he didn't forget them, but maybe there was a slightly different slant, a little update. So I don't think there's anything inherently bad in following current affairs. In fact, you know, when you're approaching these doors, we said you've got to keep banging on. If you don't take account of the environment that you're living in, then you're not going to actually take the right course of action. So I think, you know, being aware of current affairs is very important. Also, I think on the you know, the opposite side of what we said about mainstream media, Akumak, for example, is a positive influence. Okay, listen to Akumak every day. If you're having a negative situation, have some encouragement, have some positive input. And that's, I think you've got a major contribution to make on that, Chandra. You're a decent, positive person, and you're running this show, and everything about this show is positive. So, you know, you could do worse than tune into this every day if you've got a problem. And that brings me to the second E, which is, in my opinion, endearment. Because actually what we need around us is not the naysayers, but on the opposite side of the equation, you want the encouragers around you. You want the positive thinkers, the creatives, the people who say, actually, what about if you tried this? Or, I know, you could work with me in this particular instance, and we could together overcome the challenge. So look for partnerships, look for joint ventures, look for people that are around you that you can build relationships with who are positive and make, you know, the old word synergy, 1 and 1 equals 3. You know, so find people around you who are going to actually contribute something positive in the face of that adverse situation. And that is, for me, the second vital element is not only are there the doors that you can go and open, but actually, if there's 2 of you trying to open doors, there's twice as many doors potentially to be opened. And you never know what might come from that. Because as we know, you know, within the scale-up arena environment and within business growth environments, you don't get to enter into international markets unless you do it in conjunction with somebody locally. So, you know, partnerships and joint ventures, having and finding those people that you can build this endearment relationship with, whether it be business or personal, will certainly help not only to maintain a positive spirit, but actually to maybe even establish a positive path forwards. So I would suggest, you know, that's the second E, very much so. And as I said, you know, Chandra, you're a positive person, you're an encouraging person, you're a good listener. And therefore, the show that you're producing, I believe, has a very positive contribution to make to that. And I think if more people listen to Akumak and listen to your discourses, particularly if they are facing an adverse situation, they may get some ideas, they may be able to glean from the positive endearment and endeavor spirit that comes through the show. You can pay me later.
Well, definitely this is not rehearsed, and thank you so much for giving such nice compliments. We're trying our bit to not to have any negative impact, and we always cover the positive side. We always give advices to business because everybody needs advices. We also help people in networking. So try to maintain the positive outlook. So thank you so much once again, Mike.
Pleasure. And I think for me, the third E, if you like, is endurance. Okay, nobody ever said the journey was going to be easy. Nobody said that the difficulties are going to be over by, well, what time would it be for you? By 5 o'clock this afternoon. Nobody said it was going to be finishing and that it would be all plain sailing from now till the end of time. However, one thing's for sure, if you give up, you're never going to arrive. You're never going to break out of that situation. So, you know, and I think it was, well, I think we've used this before, but on the expression that it's never over until you've actually achieved the objective. So if there's still the opportunities there, the situation isn't finished. And even if you get knocked down, the key is to stand up again. Some people have lost everything and then come back and made a fortune. So it's never over until you've actually given up in your mind. And those 3 E's, you know, the endeavor, the endearment, the endurance, they came to me as the approach that a chap called Ernest Shackleton took. He was an explorer who, in the beginning of the last century, 1912, he used to do explorational journeys to the South Pole. And on one of these, he went down to the South Pole from the UK, and unfortunately, his wooden ship got frozen in the ice. And it wasn't just frozen for a week. It wasn't just frozen for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. He was actually stuck in the ice for, I believe, it was 15 months. It was way over a year. And and he obviously had a team of people, a team of men with him on that trip. And basically, those were the 3 characteristics of his leadership style that it meant that actually at the end of that period, and this is just a demonstration of endurance, endeavor, to manage to rescue his entire crew, which is what happened in the end. He didn't lose a man. And basically, when there was sufficient melting of the ice, what he did was, him and I think it was 2 or 3 of his crew members, they rowed from where they were stuck in pack ice to South Georgia in the South Atlantic. They actually rowed it, got support and supplies, and rescued the rest of the crew. So again, if he'd given up, he would never have rescued his crew, but he never gave up. And to me, that's probably the most amazing example of leadership. If you can imagine 15 months stuck in white snow or ice with virtually no food, with virtually nothing to do. I mean, I think they used to play football, so a team sport, for endearment, for, you know, keeping their spirits up. You know, I'm not so much a football fan, but I think even in that context, I would have played football. I'd have probably gone for rugby, but since there were no hospitals to fix broken collarbones, football was probably a better option. But for me, and when we were talking about how do you maintain a positive spirit in the face of adversity, how many times in 15 months you must have woken up and wished, well, I wish today we'd had some melted ice, but no, we haven't. Another day, we got to endure, we got to work, got to keep busy, got to keep eating, got to keep positive, and we've got to keep working together. And because of his leadership spirit, and for me, that is probably the best example of leadership that I can think of. And then there was, of course, Horatio Nelson, who was, you know, quite a famous admiral a couple of 100 years ago. And just before the Battle of Trafalgar, he had a fleet of ships, and he used, and I couldn't tell you what it looked like, but he used flags to signify a message to his fleet. And the flags he signaled, and the message he signaled was, England expects every man to do their duty. And I think that's the other key, is we as individuals, in the face of adversity, have to do our bit. It's no point in expecting your next door neighbor to do it for you or somebody else to come bail you out. They've got their own challenges to resolve. Maybe they've got their own adversities. But one thing's for sure, if you sat down with your neighbor at a safe social distance and maybe had a cup of chai and chatted through your challenges, built the rapport, given a bit of encouragement, a bit of support, some creative ideas, there is much more chance that something positive is going to happen for both of you if you both sit down and, you know, mournfully think about how bad my situation is. I can't get out of this and blah, blah, blah. Because the other good thing is you're not alone in it. Particularly in the current situation, there's an awful lot of people in the same boat. And the other point that's relevant is there's always somebody worse off. It's not always easy to think that. You know, sometimes we want to be inward looking and thinking how miserable our situation is. But actually, the only way to look at it is to say, actually, I could be much worse off. If you've got a roof over your head, you're far better off than somebody who hasn't got a roof over their head. If you had something to eat today, you're far better off than somebody who hasn't had anything to eat yet today. So whatever happens, you've got to be, you know, count your blessings. Because if you don't count your blessings and keep positive, you'll join the naysayers and the mainstream media on the spiral down. And that there's only one way that you go down, and that's to the abyss. The only way is up and forwards, in my view. So how do you maintain a positive spirit? You've got to work at it with endeavor, endurance and endearment.
Well, Mike, you gave a very good example of Mr. Shackleton. I think people who have not read about him must read and understand what is this endurance is all about. I think he went to the North Pole and then he wanted to find the South Pole, and that's when, you know, all these events happened, and I think many more events. His life is an example for everyone.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So I think some of these very positive words came out from our discussion today. I think you are speaking from the heart and saying that, hey, let's not, there is no need to lose hope. In any adverse situation, we have to keep our positive outlook always, because something good will happen beyond the horizon. So I think that is what your advice is to our viewers, isn't it, Mike?
Absolutely, 100%. And the contribution from someone like yourself. And don't take for granted those people who can add a positive contribution in your life, because they are the ones who are going to help you get through whatever adversity you're facing today.
Absolutely. I think these are some of the positive encouragement we have got today from you, Mike. And I'll tell the viewers that if in case they want to talk to us, talk to Mike, please contact us. We will make that happen. We will bring you live and you can discuss directly with Mike. So with this positive outlook and advice, I'd like to end today's show. Mike, thank you so much for finding time and coming and discussing and telling us so many good words today.
It's been an absolute pleasure as always, Chandra.
Thank you, Mike, and I will catch up with you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
We have some unique